The wife of the owner of the junkyard was another fatality. She was 38 years old, and she received a dose of 5.8 gray. She became sick about 3 days after coming into contact with the substance. Her condition worsened, and she developed internal bleeding, especially in the limbs, eyes, and digestive tract, and suffered hair loss. She also died on October 23rd, about a month after exposure. Israel Baptista dos Santos, aged 22, received a dose of 4.5 gray. And he was an employee of De Ferreria, who was the owner of the junkyard. He worked on the radioactive source primarily to extract the lead. He developed serious respiratory and lymphatic complications and was eventually admitted to the hospital and died 6 days later on October 27th. These names, man. Admelson Alves de Sousa, age 18, received a dose of 5.3 gray, and he was also an employee who worked on the radioactive source. He developed lung damage, internal bleeding, and heart damage, and died on October 18th. Of these 244 who had significant levels of radiation material in or on their bodies, 129 had internal contamination. The majority of them only suffered small doses, less than a 1 in 400 risk of getting cancer as a result. 1,000 persons were identified as having suffered a dose which was greater than 1 year of background radiation. It is thought that 97% of these people had a dose between, a 1 in 2,000 and a 1 in 100 risk of developing cancer as a result. So, now they have to clean this mess up. Sorry. Topsoil had to be removed from several sites, and several houses were demolished. So basically, this whole city block where this thing took place was demolished. All the objects from within these houses were removed and examined. Those that were found to be free of radioactivity were wrapped in plastic bags, while those that were contaminated were either decontaminated or disposed of as waste. There's a video that I guess if I don't violate any copyright laws, I'll insert at some point here, or maybe give you a link. Here's a link. Go click on it. Which shows the mother of the little girl is so upset because her baby died and she doesn't have anything to remember her by, because all the objects in her house are being thrown away, taken to some radioactive waste facility, and are going to be disposed of. So the reporters from this actually don full contamination suits, and they go in the house and they grab a bunch of photos for her, which is very nice. The choice, no. Actually, it says here that to reduce the psychological impact of the event, greater effort should be taken to clean up items of personal value such as jewelry and photographs. This wasn't actually practiced in form. They just said that they were going to do that. So they break down this junkyard. They break down all the houses. They scoop up all the topsoil. And they're taking this away and they're going to dispose of it somewhere. After all that, vacuum cleaners were used to remove dust from before the surfaces and plumbing were examined for radioactivity. Painted surfaces could be scraped, while floors were treated with acid and Prussian blue mixtures, which were also used to treat some of the victims. And we're not talking about the neo-Nazi little girl group. Roofs were vacuumed and hosed, but 2 houses had to have their roofs removed. The waste from the cleanup was moved out of the city to a remote place for storage. So, providing another link here, they are being housed in these 2 mounds with grass growing over them, somewhere outside of the city. Oddly enough, there's like farmlands all around it, which you would think, isn't that stuff going to escape? But they put all the radioactive waste in these, 55-gallon drums. Link to pictures. I guess they probably put them in lead. They probably did this. They put them in lead and cement and sealed them all up. The urine was treated with ion exchange resin to compact the waste for ease of storage. Urine? Oh, I can read. Prussian blue was used to internally decontaminate many humans. And then their urine was like freeze-dried and compacted. Okay, that's cool. So, what was I going to say next? So after all this, people are like, holy crap, this is really bad. Who do we blame? In light of the deaths caused, the 3 doctors who had owned and run IGR, which remember was the clinic, were charged with criminal negligence. The main cause of this incident was the severe negligence of the facility's former operators who left behind such a dangerous item. Which I found very odd, because the reason they had left it there was because the city told them to. But the city being the city, the doctors who owned the clinic got blamed for leaving it there, even though they said they couldn't move it because there was a court order. I guess they were just supposed to move it anyway. And they were ordered to... One of the medical doctors owning IGR and the clinic's physicist were ordered to pay 100,000 Brazilian dollars for the derelict condition of the building. The 2 scrap metal dealers were not included as defendants in the public civil suit. CNEN, the National Nuclear Energy Commission of Brazil, was ordered by the 8th Federal Court of Goiás to pay compensation of $1.3 million and to guarantee medical and psychological treatment for the direct and indirect victims of the accident and their descendants down to the 3rd generation. As the accidents occurred before the promulgation of the Federal Constitution of 1988, and because the substance was acquired by the clinic and not the individual owners, the court could not declare the owners of IGR liable. So just the doctors were. Fantastic. Okay. Oh yes, that's what I was going to talk about. So, all these people died. We've cleaned up everything. Now we have to bury the bodies. It's a process. There are all-out riots when they try and do this. Because the people, not that they're not that intelligent, but they don't know a whole lot about radiation. And they're convinced that these bodies are still radioactive and they're going to leak the radiation into the soil. They're going to contaminate the town, which is already contaminated. It's going to be a whole fiasco. So they bury these bodies in lead-lined coffins encased in cement, way down under the earth. Sorry. Yeah. Which sucks for the families, because they're like, this kind of isn't cool. Insert here some photos of the coffins. Yes, when the little girl was buried, in particular, there were riots. She's buried in, well, they're all buried in a common cemetery, 4 of them, and lead-lined coffins in a row. It's really sad. There was a riot where over 2,000 people armed with stones and bricks tried to prevent her burial. Holy crap. So this is a big deal for the international community in particular, because these kinds of things happen kind of often. Insert a link here talking about all the radiation accidents that have happened are usually because of people, scrap metal dealers, getting these sources. And you'd think that the fact that something's glowing, perhaps has a radiation sticker on it, means that you shouldn't touch it. You shouldn't move it. You certainly shouldn't put it on your body and play with it. It's not a lesson that's been learned particularly well. In Samut Prakarn, Thailand, a disused Cobalt-60 telepathy head was partially dismantled, taken from an unsecured storage location, and sold as scrap metal in February 2000. So this has happened recently. It happens a lot. Well, theoretically not a lot, but a lot more than you would think. And they tried to remedy this by coming up with a new sticker for radioactive waste. Because apparently people aren't familiar with the ones that they have now. It's not working. I don't know if it's working. One wouldn't think that it's working that well. So that's the story of Goiânia. This beautiful, glowing substance that people thought was miraculous. Perhaps they thought that it would lift them out of poverty. Something foreign and amazing actually wound up killing them, infecting them. It's going to have ramifications for years and years to come. To this day, they still examine the children of Goiânia, and they take Geiger counters and they go over their bodies and down their torsos, trying to see if they still have these traces of cesium in them. Everything's still kind of the same. If you look at the town, it doesn't look that different. But just imagine the psychological impact that this had. It's very creepy. It's very weird. It's very sad. And it's an awesome story. I love it. It's so compelling, and it just makes you think. So I hope you enjoyed it in the, albeit fragmented way that I've presented it to you. I'm sure nobody spent the time